Welcome to Stories I Didn't Tell Last Sunday. I'm Doug McAllister for Journey Fellowship Church, and joining me today is Andy Ricketts, and from Atlanta via Zoom is Kirk Plaisance. And today we're going to talk about a little bit about our relationships, your salvation, your call to ministry, and I want to touch on your new project you guys have developed. It's called the Rushmore Show.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to close out with a lightning round of Who's Your George?
It'll be so fun.
Yeah. So anyway, thanks for joining us. We're glad to have you along with us today for the conversation. I want to start with you, Kirk. I've always called Kirk KP since the first day I met him. I don't know if he likes that or not. I never even.
Yeah, I love it. It's been one of my long-term nicknames.
Oh, good. Then I'll feel right.
It's even my Instagram, so now it's KP to PK. So
yeah, I know.
Kind of Saul to Paul.
When did you and I first meet? What year was that, Kirk?
So got married in 2008, so right. June of 2008, and about a month later, we showed up at the church.
Yeah.
So we probably met maybe within the first, probably month or so of me coming. The first few weeks, I was in the back. Sneaking in, sneaking out. Didn't really want to be a part. So fall of 2008, I would say.
So when did you have your conversion experience with Jesus? What was your salvation baptism story?
Yeah, so kind of going back to that marriage, me and my wife, we were planning on a wedding. We were in a pretty toxic relationship, to be honest. I mean, it was pre-Christ. I grew up Catholic, never showed up to church, didn't read the Bible. I was supposed to be read to me, those kind of things. I actually have priests in my extended lineage, like my dad's uncle or whatever. But so we were definitely Catholic and rosaries and all that stuff. So I knew the faith. I went to Catholic school, but I just didn't want to participate. It was just too much of my time. I was more into having fun. I was more into chasing girls, drinking, sports, you name it. But when I was trying to settle down with Brittany, the pastor that was going to do our counseling, he was pretty adamant that we found a church, and we weren't really his church. And actually, that's even a funny story. We were borrowing a church. He was not even, the church we used wasn't even his church. So he was just like, look, this is just real crazy. We're going to marry you, but I need you to find a church. Yeah. Now, here's the funny part of the story, PD, is Brittany had been trying to get me to go to Harvest probably about 3-4 years prior to that.
I remember.
And I was like, Brittany. I am not going to Harvest. There is no way I'm going there. Those guys have way too much fun at church. I don't know what's going on at that church. They're weird. And I'm going to go somewhere else so that I can not be happy at church, kneel and
of course.
Whatever. Yeah. And so long story short, we ended up, after we got back from the honeymoon, Brittany said, hey, look, there's a new church out on the service road in Lacombe. It's called Journey Fellowship Church.
Yeah.
And at that point, I didn't know yet that it was Harvest still. Yeah. And I was like, okay, let's go try it out. And that very first message, I won't forget it. It was, Who's Your Daddy? That was the very first message that you did. Mm-hmm. And you were doing like Heavenly Father, but you did Earthly Mother, Earthly Father, and I think Jesus was probably the 4. It really made an impact on me because I remembered it. And my wife, that very first time, was like, oh, they're starting a new series. We can come the whole month and listen to the whole thing. Yeah. Well, that was actually the first time I had went to my mother's grave, was that first time. And she had been past 8 years.
Wow.
And then the conversion just kind of started happening. We went through a lot of trouble, a lot of addictions that we were fighting. Brittany ended up going to rehab for 6 weeks. And in that process, I just met good people like yourself and some of the other leaders. I had my moment at the altar. I was actually, Pastor Allen, our old children's pastor, was probably the one that that drove something home to me that really probably changed my life completely. Was I kept kind of sneaking out the back of the church. I would show up in the back row. I'd always show up late because I didn't want to go through worship and watch folks raising their hands and and just submitting themselves to the Lord.
Yeah.
But I would show up. I loved the music. I loved watching the drummers, to be honest. And so I kind of made my way up the row. But in that service, I would sneak in after worship, listen to you or Pastor Ken preach, and then I would sneak out the back to go get my kids before altar call, because I wasn't going to make an altar call.
Yeah.
And Pastor Allen met me in the hall and said, "Are you Kirk?" And I was like, "Oh man, what did my kids do?" And he said, "Hey, look, we've been reading your comm cards. I've been writing all kinds of stuff on those comm cards, PD.
Yeah.
And you read them." And he said, "We've been reading your comm cards and praying over you and praying over your family. But I have to just let you know, I don't need to read your comm card anymore to know what to pray for." And I was about to leave the church then. I thought he was about to tell me he was in the recliner watching football. Holy Spirit showed up. Kirk's watching porn. Kirk's getting in a fight with his, wife or whatever. And he ended up saying, while you're writing all that down on the comm card, your 9-year-old daughter, McKenna, is making the altar call in children's church and telling us all about what's going on in your house.
That's
that really impacted me. And I decided shortly after that I was going to stop drinking, stop drugging. I wasn't really a big drug person, but we were going to stop all the extracurricular activities.
Yeah.
And I was going to try and get my family together. And within 6 months, my wife was in rehab. We had been separated for a while, and then decided to join the church, become members of the church, joined your children's volunteer staff.
Yeah.
And then your daughter, Christian, brought a friend to preach. I think it was on Mother's Day, from Highlands.
Right.
And she preached about the call on your life. Ironically, that very morning, I told my wife, what if I stopped being in nursing school and went and worked for the church? Maybe they need a janitor or something. I don't know what it is. Yeah. But I want to make every day Sunday, because Sunday's the only day that we really enjoy life. And the other 5 days, we're fighting the grind. We're trying to figure out ourselves again, relearn. But when we show up to church, it's been life-changing. So shortly after that, I approached you guys, led to SUM, was one of the first students to graduate from our cohort there. And now you guys are just flourishing, going on to bigger things. So that's kind of that was a really quick process, but 10 years sober, me and my wife, working on 11, about to be 11. And loving Jesus since 2008, I guess. So that's it.
Man, what a great testimony. When did you get baptized? What year did that happen? Do you remember?
So got baptized as a young one, with the Catholic Church pouring and everything. And then so it took me a while to kind of just redo that, because as I was going through school, you have to remember, I never had read the Bible before when I joined the school, which is a funny story. The pastor said, open your Bibles to Matthew. And I looked at the guy next to me and said, where's the book of Matthew? Yeah. And so I joined school never doing that. And one of my first questions was, am I supposed to get baptized again because I did it wrong? Yeah. So it took me a little bit of time. I ended up getting baptized September of 2008, I believe is the time. September of 2008. So almost 3 years later, I went through school, finished school, was coming on staff. We had already kind of planned that. And I said, you know what? I'm just gonna recommit myself and get baptized. So Pastor Kim baptized me out by the cross. Yeah. Over there on the interstate. So
I saw that picture the other day of you getting baptized, but it didn't mark what year it was. I just kind of wondered what year that was. And you were I think our very first graduate from our cohort. And I remember you and I talking that day, and I said, Kirk, when you graduate, you want to come work full time for us, because at that time we had an opening for our generations pastor. And you said, I don't know. Yeah, but I don't know. Yeah.
Well, it was like this, PD. It was like this. First off, you guys asked me to come on and be the youth pastor.
Right.
And this was on the heels of our last guy leaving and some numbers kind of dwindling. Yeah. And he was such a rock star in a lot of the eyes. So I, in my mind, was like, nobody wants to QB at New England after Brady leaves, after New Orleans after Breeze leaves. It was just like this aura was around him. Even with my daughter, I was like, oh gosh, I don't know if I can fill those shoes. Yeah. And then I accepted it, and then you guys were like, how about the children's pastor? And
How
I was
about-
like, oh, that's easy. That's easy. I'll take that one, because I had already been in that system. And then you came back like a week or so later and was like, I was on my tractor. God told me generations.
Yeah.
How about generations? We put it together. And I was like, well, I've already accepted both of them, so let's do it.
Let's do it. Yeah, that was a time that we were revamping every ministry, and when you came on the team, I said this is a good time to just reorganize all of our children's and student ministries. And Kirk, you were just a soldier. You said, "Hey, whatever you want to do, let's do it, man." So we just kind of invented it from scratch. We didn't have a model to follow. I said, Kirk, we got to invent this ourselves. And man, you really took it. You took ownership of it, and you helped us create a whole system that you were able to pass on to somebody else. Which is a part of the great story, which is one of the reasons I want Andy to tell his story. So you're going through school, you graduate, you come on staff, and then you recruit this young guy. Andy Ricketts. At that time, you were teaching junior high.
Yeah.
So what year did you come to Journey, Andrew?
Yeah, so we started attending Journey at I-12 in Lacombe in 2014.
Yeah.
We had just recently had Zoe, our oldest.
When did you graduate, Kirk, from SUM?
I graduated in 15.
Yeah.
So January of 15, I graduated. So
Yeah.
he had started coming in that fall.
Isn't it really neat to look back at God's hand?
Oh, yeah.
It's just because you don't see what's happening around you, but the creator of the universe
Yeah.
knew exactly what time. So you guys came in when Kirk was just assuming his new ministry role with us. So tell us about your first child was born. And
Yeah. So I myself did not grow up attending church at all. Very sporadically went to a youth group in my high school years, but definitely was never connected to a church. And, we just didn't grow up doing that. Courtney, my wife, grew up in the Catholic Church. And her family did attend church. But we, as a family, when we got married, church was not a part of our life.
Right.
Now, just a little quick backstory. I was playing in metal bands and things through my teen years and through college. And we had a good friend, Dustin, who played in bands, who was actually, not ever in a band with me, but was in other bands in the scene. And we knew that he and his wife were attending Journey, or were attending church. We didn't know it was Journey.
Yeah.
So we were just hanging out with them one day, and we said, hey, we had been starting the conversation of wanting to try church out. We wanted to give Zoe, our oldest, the opportunity to be able to experience that. I like I said, I didn't really experience that much as a kid. So we asked them, and we just got to talking to them, and they said, yeah, we attend Journey. It's in Lacombe, great campus, great people. So we just started attending church, and it was the fall of 2014.
Wow.
So Zoe has basically grown up in the church.
How old was she when you came the first time?
She might have been 6 months.
Oh, wow.
Old.
She was a baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she was born in March. It was around fall time. So it had to be about 7 months old that she was when
Right.
we
How
started.
long did you come to church before the Holy Spirit just got a hold of you?
So that's an interesting one too. So you mentioned I was a public school teacher, and at the time we were doing events first Wednesdays.
Yeah.
And I remember there was always a first Wednesday happening, and not my wife, I was always the person with the excuse why we can't do it.
Yeah.
Well, it's Wednesday, it's middle of the week. I've been working all day with kids and just kind of worn out, and so that was in our head. That was our excuse that we would always use, something along those lines. And I remember there was one. It was always the August first Wednesday was a pray for the teachers,
Back
pray
to
for the
school.
students, back to school.
Yeah.
So for whatever reason, we decided, hey, we're going to go to this one. So this was our first one that we went to. And I remember sitting in service or standing in service, and much like Kirk said, not the person to raise your hands, not the person to really, interact and be involved in worship, kind of the hands crossed, whatever. But I remember, I can't tell you what song it was. I can't tell you, other than I knew it was the August one, where the Holy Spirit just hit me, and I started tearing up crying.
Wow.
I don't know what, it certainly wasn't me, because I was not that person to do that. And I just fell on my knees, and I was like, at the time I didn't know what it was. I just knew that there was something inside of me that just felt like,
Right.
what I needed to do, and I told Courtney, I said, I don't know what this is, but I want to go a little deeper.
Yeah.
I want to figure out what this is all about. So at that point, it was probably 2015. It was probably, a good year
Yeah.
or about until we really got connected with the church. And really when I felt
That was your first encounter with the Holy Spirit.
yeah,
though.
yeah, absolutely.
And you got baptized, what, a year later? or
Yeah, so 2016,
Yeah.
Easter Sunday,
Yeah.
in 2016,
Yeah.
I got baptized. I remember it was the day after Zoe's birthday. We had a birthday party, and it was the
Yeah.
next day, got baptized. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just a
Yeah.
great.
So you got saved, got baptized, got filled with the Holy Spirit. How did you get into ministry?
Yeah, we're full of great stories here.
Yeah.
So, had kind of, was serving with the church. Honestly, how I first started going to serving was around that time you had mentioned that we were opening a Bell Chase campus.
Right.
And immediately when we heard that, Courtney and I looked at each other because we both grew up on the West Bank.
Yeah.
Courtney grew up in Bell Chase.
Yeah.
I grew up in Tarrytown, which is just on the other side of the bridge, right?
Right.
So we're like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'll go and sweep the hallway if
You
I
guys
need
were
to.
the first couple to volunteer to go
Yeah.
to the Bell Chase campus.
We said we have to be a
Yeah.
part of this.
Yeah.
I don't know what is involved.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I remember meeting up with Pastor Luis.
Yeah. You became
and-
his right-hand man
Yeah.
for a couple of years.
Yeah. So we served for a while at the Bell Chase campus.
Yeah.
In the beginning time, ripping up carpet,
Yeah.
taking out those pews with that pink,
That was some really ugly carpet, man.
the pink
Man.
salmon colored
Man, it was-
carpet.
I don't think it's been changed since 1975, but
Yeah. So the last time I was there, the stairs actually still had it. I don't know
Yeah.
if now it still does.
No, it's
but
all gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so just knocking down walls.
yeah.
Again, nothing that I was qualified to do at all, other than I just knew something about Bell Chase, and there was just a connection there. So I
And
got-
then he recruited you to play drums, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So I actually started on the worship team.
Yeah.
Was my first. Now I've been playing drums for close to 20 years.
Right.
But it's always been a passion of mine.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hey, I'll definitely play drums. That doesn't mean I have to talk to anybody. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean I have, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Remember where we put the drum cage?
oh my gosh.
It was the old baptistry, which was like above the pulpit. So we covered the baptistry up and put you up in a room all by yourself.
Yeah.
Like you were Ringo Starr.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the worst part about it, and it was quickly fixed, was that there was no vent.
Yeah.
So for the first week or two, it
Yeah.
was literally a sauna.
And
you could
were
probably
sitting over an open baptistry on a thin piece of plywood. You
Oh,
could
yeah.
have at any time collapsed into the
yeah,
baptistry.
yeah. It was totally not
Yeah.
OSHA certified.
Yeah,
Probably how we did things there.
Yeah, because we put the floor in ourselves. So,
Mhm,
yeah.
mhm. Yeah, so it probably fogged up the glass shield in
I'm sure.
front, and
Yeah.
it was hot. But really, probably about 2 weeks in, they're like, "Yeah, hey, we're going to give you a little AC
Yeah.
vent." I said,
we
Thank
gotta
you.
Wear some new ductwork in there. All right. So fast forward now. Let's talk about you getting the call to go into vocational ministry. I know
Mhm.
Kirk had a big part
Yeah.
to play in
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
So when I mentioned I was a public school teacher, I was also a coach.
Yeah.
Right. I coached football, did a little basketball, and did softball. And I had started kind of talking to Kirk, just at church, getting to know him and his family, and through fantasy football. That was another big one. We did fantasy football through the church, so that's
God
kinda how we
could
connected.
use anything, man.
Yeah.
He could use fantasy football.
Yeah, so we connected through fantasy football originally, and just kind of started talking in the church and stuff. And I was coaching softball, but am nowhere near
Yeah.
an expert in softball. It was really in the public school. It's just like, hey, are you willing to do this?
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, sure. I mean, I played baseball a little bit as a kid, so I
Sure.
kind of have a general
I
idea.
can swing a bat.
Yeah. But I needed some help. I really needed some help. And then also at that same time, knowing Kirk, knowing him as the youth pastor, he would always post these. We used to do this Instagram Live every, it was like 3 days a week or something like that. It was 5:55 live, right? It was at 5:55 a.m. It was 5 minutes of worship, prayer, and a message, a devotional, right? And so I was always keeping up with those things. It was just a great way to start, my few days a week like that. And there was one day where I said, you guys were having a lock-in. So this was October time.
Yeah. What year is this?
This 2016, 2017. I
Okay.
honestly don't remember the year.
Right.
But it was probably 2017. That had to be it. Yeah. But they were having a lock-in, and I said, hey, do you guys need help tonight? I think I reached out to Kirk, maybe Brittany, I messaged him, and he's like, "Yeah, sure, come along, come help." Yeah, we definitely need help. If anybody's ever done a lock-in, don't ever turn away help.
All night long with a room full of teenagers?
Yes.
We need help.
You need as much help,
Yeah.
and no matter how much help you have, you always need more.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So I went there, not at all knowing what to expect, definitely not feeling like youth ministry was anything that I wanted to necessarily be a part of. But I really just went to go hang out with Kirk and to help out however I could. So I stayed the whole night. I didn't even, because I think Kirk even was like, "Hey, man, you could stay till like midnight and leave if you want to or whatever." And but I was like, "No, I'm going to stay the whole night," and stayed the whole night. And the one thing I remember saying is that when we did worship, it was a YouTube video that we played up there, and just kids were watching it. It was powerful. Like everybody was worshiping. It was great. But I remember going up to Kirk, and I don't know if it was at the lock-in or if it was some short time after, saying, "We got to do something a little different here." Yeah. As if I really had it. I mean, I was just coming to help out, right? We got to do something different. We could do something different. And Kirk was like, "Okay, what do you want to do?" Hey, you have the idea. Yeah. What do you got? And anyway, so just kind of fast forwarding through that, it came to a point where Kirk was going to help me coach softball, and I was going to help develop a worship team for the youth. Yeah. It's kind of how it worked back and forth there. Because, again, playing drums, knowing music, and things like that. And anyway, from that point on, I was locked in, for no pun intended there, to serving in youth. And I remember one night, it might have been the lock-in night.
So there was a key moment, and I hope this is what you're about to say.
Yeah.
The key moment was that you stayed for everything, picking up kids, and you were helping me set chairs back up.
Yes.
I remember it very, very distinctly. You were helping me set chairs up, and you had, I watched you kind of just hanging out with the kids, and I knew, listen, I wasn't stupid. I knew I needed a worship team, and I have no musical skills. So we were going to continue to do those YouTube videos until we built that. And but you had the knowledge, you had how to just make it sound right. And so I looked. I'm pretty sure we were stacking the chairs, the whole setting them all down in the row. And I looked up and I was like, "Hey, man, have you ever thought about doing this full time?" And you were like, No. I said, "I think you're called to this."
My answer was no. I just came to hang out with you, Kirk. That's all I did. Yeah. So
that was a great question to ask, man.
Mm-hmm.
What a question that would change the direction of your entire life.
Yeah. And even at that point, I said no.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't see, I'm teaching, got a career. We kind of got things figured out in the family. Like we're running pretty smoothly.
Because Courtney's a teacher also.
Yeah.
So you guys are doing really good.
Yeah. And at this time we only had Zoe. Right. So, or we might have had Amelia was anyway, she was newborn at the time.
Right.
But, so I said no, but I kept coming back and serving and being a part of it. And then really where the year that changed everything for me was 2018.
Yeah.
Kirk, again, was in the lobby of I-12 and said, "Hey, we're going on this mission trip to Atlanta. Come put your name down on a paper." I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Sure, I'll write my name down."
But you were thinking, I'm not going.
Yeah, thinking in the back of my head, I could probably cancel. I could probably say no. I have no idea what this is about.
Yeah.
Never done missions at all. Really just kind of fresh and serving in ministry.
Right.
And anyway, so I signed up for that, wound up not backing out of it, went on the mission trip, and just completely rocked my world.
And you knew you were called.
Yeah. Leading up to that point, I was probably in denial a little bit. I think I felt it, but I think really the mission trip cemented it.
Yeah.
And I remember having a conversation with Kirk and Brittany in the parking lot on the side of the building.
Yeah.
As the night we got back, when kids were getting picked up, and I'm like, I'm feeling this call to ministry, but I don't really know what my options are. Again, I'm teaching. I got a career. I don't really think that Bible college, because I knew at the time, Kirk had gone through SEM, he'd done the whole Bible college route. I don't know how that would work. Yeah. I'd have to quit my job. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's just in my head.
Because you already have a college degree.
Yeah.
And you have a full-time job. It's kind of hard to go back to school.
Absolutely, yeah. Having two kids and just everything, it just made it complicated.
Yeah.
But he had mentioned, "Hey, have you heard of LaSalle, Louisiana School of Ministry?"
Yeah.
And I said, "No, never heard of that at all." And he told me about a couple other leaders that we had in the church at the time who had gone through it.
Yeah.
And it made sense, right? It was once a month class. It was it was affordable.
Yeah.
So I decided to look into it, to research it some, and kind of in my head made up my mind that, I'm going to give it a shot.
Yeah.
But there were still doubts in my head that even the low cost it was, that was eating into whatever my bills were for the month or whatever we needed it for.
And just so that everybody understands, LaSalle is a school that helps qualify a new candidate to get credentials.
Yes.
So it's someone who brings a lot of already training, but who doesn't have the doctrinal education for a ordination. So you're thinking about going for your credentials.
Yeah. So I'm contemplating it. And then a couple weeks, it had to be after the mission trip. We had summer camp. Again, my first summer camp, I go to serve. I have no idea what I'm getting into, right? I've already done a lock-in. Might as well try the camp thing too.
Wow. Full immersion.
Yeah. And it was a Friday of camp. I'll never forget this. And it was payday. So I was waiting till payday to go register. Again, still wrestling with all these doubts and questions and thoughts. What is this really going to mean? Courtney and I had honestly had some pretty tough conversations about it. We weren't really sure what we wanted to do. But I made up my mind, and you know what, I'm going to do it. But before, I'm going to just check my bank account. I'm going to make sure I got paid, And just real quick, as a teacher, if you do different trainings during the year, you get what's a stipend pay, right? It may be 2-3 months ago that you did it, and they finally decided to pay it to you. Yeah. So I open up my bank account, and I'm like, well, I feel like something's wrong here. And I'm looking through the details, and I actually received a stipend pay that was to the exact dollar amount that it cost for registration and for the class for LaSalle for that August session.
Almost like God was just giving you one final confirmation, man.
Yeah, and from that point, I said, okay, I don't know much about this, but I feel like God's in this.
And then you went all 3 years.
Yeah.
You went.
Perfect attendance.
I know, you went every month for 3 years. That's pretty committed, man.
Yeah.
So in the process now, Kirk, remember, Kirk, you had gone to hear Jeannie Mayo speak at the Louisiana district meeting. And I was so excited because Jeannie Mayo is, she's Elvis Presley of, youth ministry. She's Michael Jackson, who's the current superstar now. She's whoever.
Justin Timberlake? I don't know. Who would it be? That might even be.
Jeannie Mayo, man. Well, she discipled my senior pastor that I got saved under and got discipled under in the 80s. That's how long she's been in ministry. My pastor called her his mentor in the 1980s. So I know she's been around forever and ever. So Kirk said, hey, I want to go hear Jeannie Mayo. I said, man, let's do it. And you went up there and you won. What did you win that day at the
first off, they just posted like on social media or something, this drive-in Jeannie Mayo. And I honestly didn't know who Jeannie Mayo was at that point.
Right.
I was like, okay. So, but I had befriended Pastor Alan Chapin, who was the DYD at the time.
Yep.
And he was trying to get me plugged in as much as I could. So anyways, drove all the way to Alexandria to see this lady. She's in her late 60s. Now she's in her 70s.
Right.
And she just starts talking. And I'm like, how is this lady relevant? How is this even going on? And we had a lunch break. And at the lunch break, I went to the merch table and I realized that one of the books that was on the counter was actually my textbook in my youth ministry class.
Wow.
And I was like, well, gosh, this lady is something. And then I come back and I sat down and she opened up with a couple stories of a few testimonies of the youth pastors that were in the room at the time. And she started off, she said, hey, I just want to tell you a couple stories of some of these people fighting this battle with you. I don't remember the words exactly, but paraphrasing, she said, we have a guy named Kirk who is leading a fairly large church, first time ever. He's come out of all, this whole testimony. She's starting to tell my testimony to about 100 youth pastors in the room.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there thinking, gosh, there's another Kirk with a similar testimony. Testimony to me that's in this room. I wonder who this guy is. And she just keeps going and going and going. And she says, Kirk, I need you to stand up. And I do one of these numbers. I'm like, man, I can't wait to see who this guy is. And she's like, Kirk, I'm talking to you. And I'm like, she hasn't pointed to me yet. Like, who is this guy? And then it hit me, right? I'm like, how in the heck does this lady know my testimony?
Wow.
And how is she telling it to people? So I kind of do one of these numbers where I'm like, is it me? And she says, it's absolutely you. Stand up. Because she didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
But she had got some insider information. Anyway, so I stand up and she tells me, she goes on to talk about my testimony, and she tells a story about Digger Phelps, Notre Dame basketball, early 80s, defeating UCLA, who was the giants of the time. They had been undefeated for like 2-3 years.
Right.
And the story goes that in practice, Digger Phelps would have his team, after every practice, climb up a ladder and cut the nets down.
Yeah.
And that's what you do when you win the Final Four, the NCAA championship. You go and cut the nets down when you win the championship. And so there, as the story goes, they went to the point guard. After the game, the Notre Dame wins, beats them in the championship. They go to the media, finds some of the players, and goes up to one of the players, I think it was the point guard, and say, hey, how'd you feel? How did you know you guys were going to beat this? When did you realize you could overcome the giant? And he said, we've been overcoming that giant in practice every single day. Coach has been sending us up to cut the nets down.
Wow. That's
They said we knew we were going to beat this team. Now they had been like undefeated for like 2 or 3 years.
right.
So then Jeannie pulls out this basketball net
Mhm.
and says, hey, Kirk, just want to tell you, you've overcome some giants. You've done this, you've done that. I don't paraphrasing.
Yeah.
And she says, now it's time to go home and cut the nets down.
Phew.
And I'm bawling, crying at this point. I am like broken in front of 100 people. I'm standing up, all youth pastors, all people in the back of my mind. They're going, they have no idea who I am.
Yeah.
And they all have way more experience than I do.
Yeah.
And at the end, I walked and I found her, and I had a book. I had her sign it, gave her a hug. And she said, you coming to Cadre? And I'm like, don't know what that is, but what is it? She said, youth leaders coach, da, 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 da. And I said, and she told me the price. I'm like, no, I don't think I'm coming. Yeah. And so anyways, God made a way, and was able to fund to get me there, and joined. And that kind of changed. That was partially about changing my trajectory, because now my wife works for her and my daughter works for her.
Right.
And it's just been a great ministry.
Right. And it also led to the connection for you to move from Louisiana to Georgia. That was kind of like the beginning of your transition.
Yeah. So when I came on that last mission trip, truth be told, when Andy was talking about standing on the side of the building, telling me that he was feeling a call into ministry, that is the same time that we kind of confronted them, and him and Courtney, me and Brittany, and we're like, so there's this thing going on that we potentially may take. And at that mission trip, the Dream Center at the time, we're now called Frontline Response, had asked us to potentially pray about and think about taking this ministry. And we went on a dinner, and they talked to us, and there were some key words that were said about us planting a church and maybe planting a Dream Center. That is what I felt kind of God was leading us to down the road. And we had mentioned that to Andy at that time, and them, and which was a great thing. Like, oh gosh, you're planning on going into ministry full time. Hey, maybe you could be the replacement. And I remember we had to hold on to that little bit of knowledge, because we weren't really deciding we were going to go. We didn't want anybody to think we were trying to leave, or it was just a crazy time. I really hated that next 2 or 3 weeks. Like, it sucked, to be honest. And but here's the key part, Pastor Doug. I don't know if you remember this.
Yeah.
We were about to launch youth ministry on all of our campuses.
I remember.
And I had been training Andy and Kevin, Brandy, Monica, just different folks that were in the group. Right. I had kind of only preached once a month, or I was trying to let them preach more often, so get some training under their belt, so that I could leave and go do youth ministry on the I-12 campus.
Right.
And at that point, you had come to me right about that same time that was happening, you said, hey, I just want to let you know, we don't have to do that thing anymore. We sold the campus.
Yeah.
And I realized for the last 6 months, I've been training my replacement, and the replacements just told me they're all going to school.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, God, I guess this is kind of that thing.
Yeah.
And look, we went to Cadre. Here's the last part of that. We went to Cadre. Cadre was actually the weekend prior to that mission trip. Or the weekend. Yeah, it was the weekend. No, it was the weekend after. Anyways, I went to Cadre, and Jeannie's last, she had no idea or anything like that. Her last moment with me or with our team, she does these like teaching sessions, and the teaching session was, how do you leave your church well?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't ever raise my hand. I'm not that guy. So I just felt this stuttering in my spine. I was like, gosh, you got to ask the question. You got to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually raised my hand, and she's like, oh, so what you got? And I said, it's great. How do you leave a church well? But how do you leave a church you don't want to leave?
Yeah.
Was the question.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, we need to talk after this.
Yeah.
She sat me on the edge of her bed and told me to tell her the story. And I told her kind of how all things led to that and all the stuff was going on. And she essentially was like, gosh, it seems like God's really painting a good picture for you and your family to plant churches, to come to Atlanta. You've been in Atlanta, putting all these pieces together, even talking about her little instance. And she said, I think you might be out of God's will if you don't take this, but I'm not the Lord.
Yeah.
Continue praying and seek that. And that was kind of the last part of it. And then we started praying and felt that call. But yeah, so Jeannie was a big part of it. And then my daughter joined her school,
Right.
her school of ministry. And that was the plan from the get-go. And my wife was so terrified that McKenna was moving away.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, we get to go to Atlanta with you. And I don't think McKenna was so happy about that in the first place. But she is now, because she still lives in my house.
Yeah. So it's a good thing now. Well, that was a rough transition for me personally. As you well know, you and I talked about this, just because I counted you as, one of my most proud disciples, man. I was so proud of you, and I knew where you'd come from, because I'd known Brittany like back in 2003 before I ever met you, before y'all were ever married. So I just felt like I had this long-term connection to your family, and I had such grand plans for you in ministry with us. And then when you told me, hey, I think God's calling us to Atlanta, man, it was like somebody dropped a bomb on me personally. And you know that, and I've shared that with you. But in the end, the Lord reminded me that you don't belong to me, you belong to Jesus. And you got to obey what God calls you to do. So I tend to, have a deep emotional response to people that I love. And, I'm not telling you something that you don't know. But so in the transition that happened over the next few months, it's key. And I think Jeannie played a huge part in that, how to leave a church well. Because as God calls you into your ministry, into your assignment, the way you leave one place will determine how you enter into the next place. And what could have been a messy situation because of your integrity and Brittany's integrity and just the way you guys handled it, it turned into a beautiful story, and I just want to celebrate you, man. I celebrate you because you guys moved to Atlanta, and I brag on you all the time now. Oh yeah, he's our spiritual son,
Yeah.
That's my daughter.
And I am. We are. We love.
Yeah.
I'm rocking this stuff for a reason. You're still our home church.
And I still want you to know, Kirk, even though we don't talk all the time, I am still so proud of you. And I'm so proud of Brittany, and I'm so proud of McKenna, so proud of all of your kids, and that we just had a little influence in you and Britt's life, to me is just such, one of those God gifts that comes along once in a lifetime. So I'm so proud of you and proud of what you're doing. And I still believe there's a great church in you.
Yeah.
that one day God's going to birth, and you're going to plant churches. And but you're doing a pretty awesome thing right now. You're working for Frontline Response, and you're leading street ministry and guiding teams and making disciples. And in fact, we go up there every year.
Yeah.
Now Andy is leading that trip that you first initiated, that you trained him how to do it. And this is, Andy, your fifth?
This will be my fifth one.
Your fifth trip. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the day that you and Britt came to me in the parking lot, it was VBS was going on. Is that right? Was it VBS?
Yeah.
It was the last day of VBS.
Yeah, you walked up to me.
Me and Andy actually were supposed to be on stage that day. We were like getting ready.
Yeah.
And I don't remember exactly how it was, but I was like, hey, can we talk later? And you're like, let's talk now. And I was like, no, let's talk later. Let's talk now. No, now you're worrying me. Tell me now.
Well,
I was like, I don't want to do it in front of VBS, PD.
I knew it in my spirit, though. The Lord told me he's leaving. And I said, okay, I got to hear him say it. Are you leaving? And you said, we're leaving. Oh, man, I remember it was, I was just so brokenhearted about it. And I said, hey, we got to do what you got to do. I want you to obey God, because in the end, I want what's best for you and for Brittany and for your children. So after I finished the conversation with you, I think I went somewhere and just had a moment by myself to compose myself. But when I came back out at the VPS, the first person I walked into was Andrew.
Yeah.
It was just, it was almost, again, divine appointment. So I looked at Andrew, and Andrew also knew that you were leaving. I said, well, Andy, we got to speed up your training, man, because you may be Kirk's replacement. Andy said, oh, I don't think so.
That was my second time saying no.
He said, oh, I don't think so. That's not me.
Yeah.
I said, well, I may need your help. He said, I'll help, but I'm not your guy.
Yeah.
But that day the Lord told me that you were the guy. I knew you were the guy, but I didn't want to tell you. God said you're the guy.
So you asked me, Pastor Doug, you said, who are the replacement? I had mentioned about 4 folks.
I did.
And I said, I think Andy's your guy.
You did say
He's
that.
just not ready yet.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's exactly
Andy's
what you
your
said.
guy.
You gave me a list of all the team that you were training, and man, when you said Andy's name, it just dropped in my spirit. Even though he was you've only been saved like 3 or 4 years at the time, so you were kind of new in the faith, but you were moving toward getting ready.
Yeah.
So tell me how that happened with you, Andy, when Kirk was leaving and you were moving up. There was like a year of transition where we had like a group of
team
leaders that was leading. Kevin, Monica, several
Brandy,
other people. Brandy and you. So we all met at my house. Remember, we were like kind of laying out the plan.
Yeah.
You do discipleship, you do small
Yeah.
groups, you preach, you do worship.
Yeah.
We were just kind of doing it, ministry by team effort.
Yeah. So that was an interesting time. Yeah, it was. Again, I didn't want to take the role of the guy, so it actually worked out well that it was a team effort.
Yeah.
And I'm just, the mentality is that always that, like, if I start something, so like with LaSalle, I'm doing 3 years through, like I'm going to see it through. Right. So we just kept coming and serving, and my initial role was worship, right? Yeah. Again, going back to kind of how we started, worship was the first kind of responsibility I had. So we just kind of continued with that. And then just over time, continuing to serve, Kevin got a great opportunity, got called to Crowley to be a youth pastor there. Everybody just continuing to serve and things, and it just eventually got to the point.
And I kept telling the Lord, you're taking all these great people, man. You took Kirk, you're taking Kevin, but the Lord said, but you got Andy.
Yeah. At least you got me. Yeah. Who knows? Yeah.
At least for right now, we have Andy, man. Unless God calls you somewhere else too.
Yeah. No. So it was a great experience to be able to work with a team.
Yeah.
And not just the 4. We had spouses that were. Courtney is a huge part.
Had a strong team, man.
Yeah.
Really strong team. Kirk had done a great job of raising up leaders.
Yeah, definitely.
So that when he left, the vacuum was filled instantly. All you guys just stepped up.
Definitely.
So great job on your part, Kirk, by the way.
Yeah.
To raise up so many good leaders. So Andy started transitioning. He had to get his credentials, and then I offered him a spot. I said, Andy, you want to come on our team full time? So we set a date, and Andy said, I'll be done with my training by this date. I can give my notice and finish my contract with the school so I could start, and you gave us a date you could start.
Yeah. Yeah, I finished out. I was teaching, right?
Yeah.
I was and now I've taught for 6 years in the public school, and just pretty much serving alongside with that as well, doing what I could, and then God opened up an opportunity to be able to do this full time, which is still,
Yeah.
I don't know why he did it.
Well-
Like it's
well-
me of all people, but it's just amazing. It's a huge blessing to be able to do that.
Well, it's just a great testimony, man, that, Kirk raised up such great leaders. And then from that, God raised you up from Kirk's ministry to step into our role and our staff. And, we count you and Courtney as a son and daughter, because, you guys were all saved here and baptized and filled with the Holy Spirit, called to ministry, trained, So I guess as your pastor over all of you, it's been such a great joy of my life.
Yeah.
And I mean this sincerely, Kirk. It's been one of the great joys of my life to watch what God has done in your life, man. I remember one year calling you and Brittany and trying to get you guys to come to the marriage conference. Remember that year? I kept aggravating you. I called you like, absolutely, loud and clear.
So that we were still separated at that time.
I remember
Still
you told me
separated.
that.
I was working a sales position. I remember exactly where I was.
Yeah.
I was that sales position was like business to business, door to door type stuff.
Right.
I was just trying to make some cash to get through school. And I was so broken back then. I was always thinking about my relationships, always thinking about whatever. And you happened to call me. Obviously, it was close to Valentine's or whatever, because that was usually about the time frame of the conference.
Right.
And I wanted to go the years prior, and we just weren't doing well. And she always said no. And you called me up and you were like, "Hey, I want to sponsor you and Brittany." And I said, "Yeah, I don't know that we're on those kind of terms, but I'll sure try."
Yeah.
And I went and I sat in my car in the middle of the parking lot. I was in New Orleans, in between some industrial buildings, and I just wept and cried and was like, "Gosh, if I could just get her there." And that was my thing. Like, it's always like, if I could just do this. And I was like, if I just get her there. And I ended up gifting it to her, and then we still didn't go.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we went the next year and the next year and the next year.
You did. So I'm driving over. I think that year we had it in Baton Rouge. So I'm driving over to the hotel, and we'd sold.
Now, we made it to the Baton Rouge one.
Oh, did you? This must have been one in New Orleans.
I think it was with Kendall.
Oh, that's right. Kendall and Starla were there.
That was our first one.
You're right.
And then, maybe that was our second one. The first, we went to that one, and we went to the one where we sung in the hotel room.
Yeah, that was at that was in Baton Rouge at on Blue Bonnet. I don't remember which one it was. Anyway, the year you couldn't come, I don't remember what year. I mean, what hotel we were at. But I was driving to the hotel, and the Lord just dropped it in my soul. Call Kirk. And I was like, I said, Lord, I think we're all sold out. We don't have any rooms. And the Lord, he just wouldn't leave me. So, next time when I stopped, I pulled out my phone and I called you. I said, Kirk, I really want you and Brittany to come. And it didn't work out that time, but you did come that year and every year after that. But I just love how God never gives up on us.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
No matter how low we are or where we find ourselves, God remembers, and then he causes other people to remember you, and what beautiful things have happened in your marriage and your kids, and, since then. And now your successor is in place. And are you celebrating your first anniversary in June with us?
Yeah. So it's almost been a full year.
Yeah,
this summer will be a full year.
You survived the first full year, man.
Yeah,
you're doing it, bro.
Yeah, and
you're
I'm still
doing
here.
a great job, man.
Thank you.
Andy leads our Generations Ministry that Kirk built it. Andy's leading it now, from birth through 18 years of age, and doing a phenomenal job here.
Thank you.
Here in Slidell, and we just love you and Courtney and Zoe and Amelia. We just believe in you. So anyway, man, I just think this story needed to be told.
Yeah.
Kirk, your salvation, Andrew's salvation, and then all the times along the years where God just divinely put his hand in it, man. It's such a beautiful thing to watch.
Yeah.
And you don't know it's happening while it's happening, but when you look back, you think, man, that was just a hand of God in so many places.
Yeah.
That brought us to where we are today. And now you guys are best friends.
Yes.
Which is kind of cool, but you're 3 states apart, but you're still best friends. And you just began a brand new venture together
Yeah.
that I've really been enjoying watching. You guys have your own podcast,
Yeah.
and I love the name of it. I want you to explain it, one of you or both
Yeah,
of you.
yeah.
I'm a big fan of your podcast. Tell us the name of it, Andy.
So our podcast is called The Rushmore Show.
And tell us why. Yeah, of course,
Yeah.
we all know Mount Rushmore is where
Mhm.
the four presidents are.
Yes.
So tell us why it's called, or one of y'all, tell us
Yeah,
why it's
yeah.
called The Rushmore Show.
So I can share it real quick. We're big sports fans,
Yeah.
and if anybody follows any kind of sports writers, you typically get this conversation that gets brought up of who's on your Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks,
Right.
sports teams, whatever.
Yeah. Right.
Who's your Rushmore? It's kind of one of the analogies that
Sure.
they use for saying your top
Which
four.
is like your top four.
Your top four,
Yeah.
right? Because there's
Yeah.
four presidents.
And I
your top
love
four.
lists, man. I really, that's
Mhm.
why I like your podcast so much, because I love doing lists.
Mhm.
I read lists every day.
Yeah.
So when you told me what you guys do, it's like, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
this is a great idea.
And it's easy to follow. It's not a top 10. It's not
Right.
definitely not a top 100.
Yeah.
It's four.
yeah. And this is weekly?
Which makes it tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes it tough when it's only four to narrow it down to cut
Yeah.
out
I'd have a hard time.
the other
man.
1,000 that you want to put up there.
Because I was watching one the other day. You guys
Mhm.
did, was it ice cream? What did you do one time?
Well, we did. You may be talking about the junk food.
Junk
so
food.
junk food, we
Yeah,
didn't mention
I
ice
got
cream a
like a
lot.
top
Yeah.
24 in junk food, man. I don't know if I could do 4.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's tough, definitely, to narrow it down. But so we took that idea of the Rushmore. So it's not anything new that we created.
Yeah.
And what's funny about it is that we've been talking about Rushmores just in casual conversation
Yeah.
for years.
Yeah.
We've been driving our wives crazy.
So they want you to go into another room and do it.
Yes. Yeah. So
Let the universe hear about this.
this is
Yeah.
just, even when Kirk was still living in Slidell, we would have the conversations of Rushmore but we never did like typical like quarterbacks or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, we could talk about that. That's fun and all. But we
Yeah.
always like to say, what's your Rushmore of
Right.
Jello flavors? I don't know. Something.
It was usually whatever we were holding, eating, watching,
Yes.
whatever, listening to. All right, so this is a good song. What
Yeah.
about your Rushmore of quirky 80s pop, whatever? And we're like, okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So, it's
So
a
there's
little,
4 presidents.
Yes.
There's Washington, Jefferson, Lincoln, and Roosevelt.
Roosevelt.
So do you have a particular order you go down for
Yeah.
the top 4?
So, Kirk, you want to tell them about how do we do our rankings in the
Yeah, so it started off real easy that we just started saying this term, who's your George?
Yeah.
Meaning that's your number one.
That's number 1. Yeah.
Yeah. Who's your George? He's the number one president. He's the first president, whatever.
on the $1
And,
bill?
and sometimes we didn't even just do the Rushmore part. We would just say, all right, so who's your George of racquetball players?
Yeah.
And I'm like, gosh, I don't know any of them. Let me go find at least the number one.
Let me look it up.
But then when we decided to put the show together, I really tried to research other people that might be doing similar things. And the only people that were really doing it were other sports writers. Like Shannon Sharp does it right now.
Yeah.
He had like Snoop Dogg on because he was the halftime show. And he's like, give me your Rushmore of rappers, right? And so you see other guys kind of generating, but it's always, these are my 4 on the mountain. And so we kind of wanted to give an idea of how we could give some significance and put some talking behind it.
Right.
And so we in our heads decided that it was going to be George will be first, George Washington. Significantly, we think Lincoln might be second. This is
A lot
this
of
is up
important
to-
things.
This might be somebody else's Rushmore might have them different. That's fine, and that's a part of the parameters of our show. It's our personal Rushmore, not what the world's best ever. It's what I think are the best ever, and that's what matters.
Right.
And so it'd be George, Lincoln, and then it was kind of a toss-up between the other two. Thomas Jefferson was there early on. Had some important documents he may have helped write or been a part of, and then Roosevelt. So we went George, Lincoln, Jefferson, and then Roosevelt, and then we decided to give them all nicknames.
Yeah.
So
That's the fun part.
I like the nicknames you came up with.
Roosevelt is Rosie.
Yeah.
Thomas Jefferson is TJ Jazzy Jeff.
That's my favorite one.
Referring back.
And Lincoln is Link, like Zelda Adventures of Link. And then George is just G-Dub, like B-Dubs, like Buffalo Wild Wings. So
Most of the time,
that's the names. We usually just call him George. So there's your 4. That's how you rank them.
So 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So we always start backwards and go down. It is a pet peeve of Andy not to give number one and enlists right off the bat. We have to work backwards. So
Yeah.
Well, you
I
go
don't
to a
like-
website and they're doing the top 10 of something, and they start with number one.
Yeah, I
Well,
don't like
now it's
that.
over. There's
No.
no journey to follow.
Yeah, and there's no build up, man.
I don't want to know who's worse
Right.
than that one.
Right. Who's
I want to build up.
still from 10 up to what? I first got into top 10 lists by watching David Letterman.
Yeah.
Back in the 80s, back when he was unknown comic, came on at 11:30 at night. I would stay up. I was 18 or 19 at the time, just to watch the top 10 list.
Yeah.
And he would start with 10
Yeah.
and go up to 1. So to me, it only makes sense if you start at the bottom and work your way up to
Yeah.
the George. So
That's what we do. We rank whatever topic we want to talk about. Something we try to hold to something a little bit relevant that month as much as we can, but we give our personal, like Kirk said, top 4. Which makes it fun because we get a lot of comments back and forth of no, I think this is who should be this, but that's what we like. We like having those. It's like two friends sitting on a couch, which is where it originated.
Yeah.
Having the conversation about who's their top 4.
So I like to, you guys pulled out the obscure, what question do you want to ask your cat category?
That was one of my most favorite.
that
ones
was
we've
the
done.
funniest one and the weirdest.
So
It was just both. It was great though, man.
for those who don't
Yeah.
know, which is everyone,
Yeah.
unless you watched the episode,
Yeah.
January 22nd
Yeah.
is National Answer Your Cat's Questions
Yeah.
Day,
There you go.
which brings me to the point of who lobbied for that to need
Why
its
is that
own
a
day.
national day? Yeah.
So what we did is we took that and we said, oh, that's too good. We got to do something.
Absolutely.
So we took it and we did pop culture cats.
Because
Right.
neither one of us like real cats.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
let's talk about cartoon cats or
yeah,
something.
me too.
Yeah.
Who was the George of the cat world?
Oh my gosh, I got to go back to that. I think
George, my George was Aslan from Narnia.
Woo! That's
And
number
I think
one.
your George was Mufasa, wasn't it?
yeah, it had to be Mufasa from Lion
Yeah.
King.
But I had Mufasa on my, so we call it the Crushmore if we both have the
nice.
same guy or the same thing on our list.
Yeah.
Whenever it's mentioned a second time, it's a Crushmore. And I think Mufasa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It means we crushed it, right? We both.
He's a great
so
cat,
it's Crushmore.
He's
So
legendary.
yeah, it's been a ton of fun. We're 8-9 episodes in right now, and
So
it's just been.
Filming episode 9 and getting ready for Music March, which will
Oh,
be 10,
sweet.
11, 12, and 13. So it'll be
That's
all
going to
music.
be fun. So if people watching now want to go
Mhm.
see some of your Rushmore, where can they find you?
Yeah, so we're on YouTube. It's the Rushmore Show. Very simple. You can look us up there. We have a TikTok as well.
There
Still
you
trying
go.
to figure out TikTok, trying to be
Yeah.
relevant there.
Yeah.
But we got some. We actually a lot of our popularity comes through our TikTok. We've got
Yeah.
a ton of followers. I don't know how that happened, but
Yeah.
so again, everywhere we're found is the Rushmore Show. We're on Spotify as well. The
Yeah.
Rushmore Show.
Yeah.
And you can find us in all those places.
Nice.
Yeah.
So let's wrap it up.
Mm.
So we got a speed round. I understand you guys are going to let me get into the brotherhood for a minute with you on
Yes.
the Rushmore Show. So
You're in the Rushmore
explain
community.
to everyone what you're about to do.
Yeah, so we mentioned the premise of our show is that we talk about our Rushmores. We unveil our top 4 in different topics, but we
Yeah.
always have a bonus segment at the end
Yeah.
of our episode. And we've got multiple. We got one that's called "Who's Your Benjamin?" It's all about the Benjamins, which
Yeah.
All
means
about the Benjamins. So that's how we add a fifth person.
yeah,
Honorable mention.
it's basically
Benjamin
our honorable
Franklin.
mention.
And
Ben
that's
Franklin.
Ben Franklin?
Yeah,
Got it.
not
Yeah.
that he was going to be on the mountain.
Actually introduced on his birthday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, rumor is that he was supposed to have been on the mountain.
Yeah, he was one that was considered.
He never made it.
Exactly one of the reasons why we did that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it.
So that's one of the segments. We've done other segments, but our original extra segment was called "Who's Your George?" And Kirk mentioned it. That's kind of how the whole idea
Yeah.
started.
I do
And-
like that.
And the premise behind "Who's Your George" is it's a 1-minute lightning round. We give 10 to 12 questions. It's kind of wound up being 12 now, and you have a minute to answer all 12 or to see how far you can get within
Yeah.
the 12. And we say, "Who's your George of whatever?"
So you're going to ask me 12
Yes.
questions,
Mhm.
and my answer has to be my George of that category.
Your number one.
And I haven't seen the list. I don't know what
No.
Andy's going to ask me. I'm hoping I can get a couple of these answers. I mean, that's 5 seconds per question.
Yeah. So it's doable, but the key is you can't elaborate,
So I can't explain.
which is tough to do.
I can't explain why my favorite.
It's
cat-
tough to not elaborate. We can elaborate after.
Okay.
So the way that it works too is that As soon as you start answering the first question, that's when the minute starts. And
Okay.
I'll keep a timer on my
So
phone.
it's sort of like Family Feud. The clock starts on
when
your first answer.
Yeah, so you get a second
good.
really to think of
Yeah.
that first one,
All
but
right.
from then on, it's full go. Now,
right.
we always do our Who's Your George based on the theme of that episode, but we didn't really have a theme with this one. We did.
What's
kinda
a
talk about some
George
of the stories.
pastor?
We have.
My favorite George pastor?
Let's see. Is there a George Wood?
Oh, George Wood.
George Wood's got it.
Dr. George
Woods.
Wood. George Wood, man. Oh,
So we did George of the Jungle. We've done Eddie George. We've done George the Animal Steel.
I'm doing George Wood. Who's my George Wood?
Who's your George Wood?
He just passed away.
Yeah.
Dr. Wood just passed away. So this is in honor of
of
the
George Wood.
apostle.
Yeah. So what we'll do is, again, you haven't seen these ones, but it's going to be all about you. So it's really just personal things with you.
Man, I feel honored to get to sneak into the Rushmore Show for one little segment. This is exciting.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We would love to have
I
you
hope
on
I
a
don't
future
disappoint
episode.
you all.
Definitely. All right. So here we go. Are you ready to join officially the Rushmore community and Who's Your George?
Absolutely.
All right.
Who's my George Wood?
So who is your George of movies? Go.
It's a Wonderful Life.
All right, there we go. Now we're starting. Okay, your George of TV shows.
The Andy Griffith Show.
Nice. Song.
American Pie.
Vacation spot.
Gatlinburg,
That's
Tennessee.
easy. Athlete.
Larry Bird.
Mission trip that you've ever gone on.
China.
China. Comfort food.
Red beans and rice.
knew it.
Cornbread and greens.
Food that you've eaten in a foreign country.
Crickets.
Oh wow. Inspirational speaker.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
You get to a place.
Don't have anybody.
Okay, pass. Hobbies.
Hobbies, fishing.
Okay, book of the Bible.
Book of John.
Okay, and Bible verse.
John 3:16.
Okay, inspirational speaker. Come back to it. We can get it.
Let's see. Oh man.
Oh, we're there.
George Wood.
George Wood. You did it with 2 seconds left on the clock.
No way I
You
did
got
it.
all 12.
After that delay.
After that delay.
So George Wood is now my George Wood.
George Wood is your George Wood of George Woods. That is amazing.
That's a triple play
Listen,
there.
You did fantastic.
Did
you
I
didn't
really?
elaborate. The only one that you I thought for a second was
Yeah.
when you said red beans and cornbread.
Because it's the whole experience.
But
Yeah, we were kind of moving along. I was
Yeah.
like, oh,
we were hustling through those. And
beans
you got
and
to come
rice,
back. You got to pass and
Cornbread,
come back.
greens, and bread pudding. I get to finish.
Well, look at that. Now you make us look horrible because
Yeah.
we can't even do our own segment in the time limit.
Man, of all of the inspirational speakers.
I need you to ask me my favorites of things like that. I
Yeah.
don't,
We did-
usually it's like, we're talking about cats, so we're going to ask you some of the weirdest dang cat questions ever.
if you go back to
So-
the cat episode, I remember this is my favorite one I've ever.
Oh,
heard.
that's the Who's Your George of the Jungle.
George of the Jungle. I said, "Who's your George of animal sounds?" And you have to do it.
Oh man.
So he just raw. it was so funny.
I have to go back and catch that again.
Yeah,
I didn't see the
so-
end.
Well, hey, great job.
And then I said, I wanted to eat snake,
oh
and you were like, "Why'd you say that?" And I said, "Oh, I thought you've eaten snake," and I was like, "No, that's what I want to eat. That's the George of what I want to eat."
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Or trust
we
him.
have fun. We have fun, PD.
It's a lot of
Man,
fun.
I know. I have fun watching you guys have fun.
Hey, can I just say this, Pastor Doug? One of the reasons coming here to Atlanta has been, and I love you guys, has been just, it's been amazing. It's been up and down. But one of the reasons I wanted to start the show was to keep the community and the connection with Andy.
Yeah.
And we have big dreams. We wanna if it was to blow up or get wherever it would be, where we could, get some people behind it. We
Yeah.
would love to give back and do, because what we've announced, we've already preached our faith twice in the first 8 episodes, but we're not anti-Christian by any stretch, but if it happens organically, we talk about it, but we want to be able to start using our influence in a different, more positive way for the next generation.
Yeah.
And so we're just having fun, and it's been a great ride, and maybe we'd love to have you on our show one time.
Man, I would just love to be on your show. Let me know what the topic is.
Yeah.
Do you guys get to prep your top 4 before you go
Yeah.
on?
So we
Okay.
planned it at least a month out in advance.
yeah.
What we're gonna do.
Give me
So
a
like this week is it's Mardi Gras.
yeah.
So we're going to celebrate New Orleans cuisine.
Yeah.
And we got Mike Sanders on the show. So
Man,
Yes.
that's going to be a fun one because
Yeah.
Mike is
He's the expert.
Yeah,
He's
he's
the
the
expert.
food expert.
shameless plug there. Shameless plug.
Yeah, yeah, Mike. Yeah,
He was on one of your podcasts
Sanders
not that long
Kitchen.
ago.
Yeah, Mike just crossed 2,000 subscribers on
dude.
YouTube. So he texted me the night before last. I'm at almost 2,100 subscribers. He's very excited.
He's a
about
social
it.
media influencer now. Mike
he is.
Sanders.
Yeah, he was
How
on
awesome.
Stories I Didn't Tell last Sunday about a month ago.
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
did an episode with food with him. But give me a heads up on what
Absolutely.
topic you're going to invite me in on, because I'd like to make sure I pick out my real.
Yeah, I think in July we want to
forward.
have you on because we're talking about America all
Oh,
month.
sweet man!
And I know you're a big America fan. So
God bless America.
God bless America.
Yeah, I would
so
love to be on that one.
Yeah.
Let me know. Yeah.
Awesome.
Hey, look, I've enjoyed being with you,
been great.
Andrew and Kirk. Man, what a joy to hear the stories of how God moved in your lives and how it all happened here at Journey, and it just makes me, man, just so excited to be part of it. And plus, I love your show, and I got to do the lightning round with you just now. The top 12 questions.
Who's your George Wood?
Yeah, I have listened to so many inspirational speakers, hundreds, and couldn't think of one.
Yeah.
That's insane, isn't it?
When we did the inspirational speakers
It gets
episode,
you like that.
I know, like I can't think of anybody.
when we did the inspirational speakers episode, I made Jesus was my number one, was my George. So
Yeah, you can't do
you know what I mean?
He's
I'm
always
just
number
saying I might be a little bit more spiritual than you guys.
He's always number one, bro. He's number one of
he does.
every
He,
list.
he can't even make the mountain. He has
Yeah,
his
that
own.
was actually our episode that we kind of went in a little deeper.
You
It's
shared
probably my
our faith,
favorite,
yeah.
to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I just love the potential for you guys to take a fun secular topic and turn it into an influence platform for the kingdom of God and for Jesus, man. So I'm proud of what you guys are doing and glad to get to be a part of it. So in July, I'm going to be on
Yes.
the Rushmore Show. Yeah, I can't wait. Well, I sure do love you guys. Proud of both of you. Love what you're doing.
Thanks for having me on the show, by the way. I've been waiting.
Yeah, and Kirk has joined us from Atlanta, Georgia, man.
Hey, is this the first guest from afar?
Yeah, you're
This
the
is-
first guy we've ever hosted
We're
on.
starting precedents. Now you got
I
to figure out
know.
who else is next.
I know, right? So now that we have this rolling, so we're filming
Phone a
this.
friend.
Yeah, exactly. We have to call and get some advice from Kirk. But I sure do love you guys. Proud of you. Enjoy spending the hour with you. Thanks for joining us today. This is Stories I Didn't Tell Last Sunday, the weekly podcast from Journey Fellowship Church. We are so excited that you joined us today. If you want to watch some of the back episodes, they're all posted on the Journey app. Check us out on jf.church. That's our new website. If you live somewhere close by, come visit us here at Journey. Driving directions on the app and on the web. But for Journey Fellowship Church, I'm Doug McAllister. On behalf of Kirk and Andrew, thanks for watching Stories I Didn't Tell Last Sunday.